Hello and welcome back to the course on blockchain. Today we're talking about a very interesting concept called the Byzantine fault tolerance. It's a very important characteristic not only for blockchains but also for any type of decentralized system. So let's have a look. The story goes that a long time ago there was a castle which the Byzantine Empire wanted to attack and take over. I think it's a made-up story. I actually looked into it, and I think they just used the name Byzantine generals rather than. I don't think it's linked to any specific story. If you know a story, let me know. But nevertheless, one way or another, there's these four generals surrounding a castle, and they want to attack it. It can be more than four. It can be any number of generals. We're going to look at an example of four. They want to attack it, but the thing is, they can only win if the majority of them come to a consensus of what to do. In fact, whether they attack or retreat, the majority of these generals have to come to a agreement, a consensus on what they're doing. If they say, if in this case 3 out of 4 say we're attacking and they attack, they'll win. If 3 out of 4 say we're retreating and they retreat, they'll be all safe and fine. However, if they have chaos and they don't come to a consensus, they will be destroyed by the enemy, and that's how the problem stands. And so among these generals, there's one who is the main general, the commander of this army, and at the same time, there's also a traitor. So they don't know who out of these generals is a traitor. They could be a traitor. They might not be a traitor, but they could be, and usually there is. And so they don't know who the traitor is, and he's there to put some, like roadblocks in their way so that they actually don't come to a consensus. So the question is, how do they come up with an algorithm? How do they come up with a protocol, a consensus protocol, like running a bit ahead of ourselves into the next tutorial here. But how do they come up with an algorithm that will help them come to a decision despite there being a traitor? So let's have a look. They can communicate with each other, but they can only deliver oral messages, so they can't like write a paper and pass it around, all of them. And yeah, so basically that's how they can communicate. And then let's say, for example, in this case, let's say that this general here is the traitor. There he is. And so what happens is the commander issues the order. By the way, the commander himself could be a traitor. That's also something they have to keep in mind. Because if the commander was not the traitor for sure, they would just follow the commander's orders and that's it. But the commander could be a traitor. So from the perspective of any one of the generals, let's say if you're like this general over here, you don't know who out of the three is a traitor and you don't know who to trust. So you have to follow an algorithm that everybody agreed to in advance in order for this to work. And that's the question. So what is the algorithm? And what the algorithm is, the one that's proposed in the research paper that solved this problem. By the way, it sounds very trivial, but it's actually a very complex problem. There's it is, I wouldn't say very, very complex problem. It's a complex problem, and there's quite a in-depth mathematical proof to it, which includes, one of the specific cases is when there's 4 generals, but they prove it for any number of generals, and we'll see what the answer is just at the end. But for now, the algorithm that they're going to be using is they're going to just look at the majority of the messages that they get, and they're going to base their decision on that. So let's have a look. So the main general issues his order, and let's say his order is attack. It could be either. It doesn't really matter. Attack, retreat. Let's remember that as long as the majority of them agree on what to do rather than attack, or they don't have to attack, they can all agree on retreating. That's totally fine as well. But in this case, he issues an order to attack. We can get rid of these other arrows that are pointing back to the main general because they don't matter. He issues an order, and in this case, he's not the traitor. We'll have a look at when he's a traitor just now. But he's made up his mind. He doesn't really need to know what they're saying. Now it's between them to decide what are they going to do with this order. They don't know, is he the traitor, is he not the traitor? So what they've agreed is we're going to relay what the general said to everybody else, and then we'll take the majority of the votes. So the traitor, being the traitor, of course, what he says is, the general told me to attack, to retreat. Like the green arrows mean attack, red arrows mean retreat. The general told me to retreat. So this guy says to these two, the general told me to retreat. Then next one, this general says to everybody, the general told me to attack, because he is just saying what the general said. And then this one says, the general told me to attack too. And so now, can they come to a consensus? The question is, can they agree on something? Well, if you look at the majority decision, the general has already made up his mind, the commander, so he's attacking because he's issued that order. But now let's look at these ones. This general got 1 red arrow and 2 green arrows. So he's going to say, I'm attacking too. And then this one got 1 green arrow, 2 green arrow, 1 red arrow. So he's attacking too. And we don't care what the traitor decides, because he's a traitor. And because we already have the majority consensus. So based on that algorithm, they came to a consensus. More than half of them are going to attack, and so they will take this castle. They will win. Same thing if the general said we're all retreating, same thing would have happened. They would all just retreat, so they would come to a consensus anyway. So that's the case when one of the lieutenants or one of the non-commanding generals is a traitor. Let's have a look at the case when, this is quite fun. Let's have a look at the case when the main general is the traitor. So will this algorithm work? That's the question. So the commander is the traitor. What can he do? He can tell everybody to, do the same thing, right? If he tells everybody to attack, well, that would be quite silly of him, because then they would just tell each other to attack, and they would attack, and they would take the castle, right? There would be consensus. Same thing, retreat. He would tell everybody to retreat. They would just retreat, and again, they win. So they solve the problem. So what's the only way he can mess things up is he can actually tell 2 of them to attack, like these 2, and 1 of them to retreat. And let's see if that messes things up for the army. So what they do again is they just relay what they heard from the general. This one says, general told me to attack. This one says, general told me to retreat. This one says, general told me to attack. And now let's see if they got the consensus. So here they've got 1, 2, 2 out of 3. So he's attacking. He's attacking 2. He's got 2 arrows and 1 red one. This one's also got 2 green arrows, 1 red one. So in this case as well, they are going to attack, or it could have been retreat. If the general issued 2 red orders, 1 green order, then the 3 of them would retreat, and the army would be safe. So as you can see, what this is showing is that there's this Byzantine general's problem, and then there's this algorithm of taking the majority of the conveyed information or relayed information and acting upon that, basing your decision on that, and that algorithm is Byzantine fault tolerant. The question is, to what level is it tolerant of to what level is it tolerant? So the question is, what if we had 2 traitors in this army? In the case of 2 traitors, you can try it out for yourself. There's no way that they would succeed. There's no solution to this problem if there's 2 traitors. So then what they did in the paper is they mathematically proved that for instance, for this algorithm to work, you have to have no more than 33% traitors. So 1/3 of the army of the generals cannot be, more than 1/3 cannot be traitors. So if you have 100 generals and they're all deciding, or let's say you have 10 generals and they're all deciding, if 4 of them are traitors, then that's it. You're not going to win. If 3 of them are traitors, then this algorithm works. And so that is the level of tolerance of this system in the sense of traitors. Now, how does this go back to blockchain or other systems that are decentralized, more technological systems? The thing there is that, for instance, in the blockchain, what happens? We might have somebody trying to attack the system, and we need to come up with a consensus protocol, like an algorithm like these generals came up with. We need to come up with a consensus protocol, which we'll be talking about in the next tutorial, which will allow us to protect the system from traders or from people trying to attack it and so on. And we want to make it as tolerant as possible. So we want to make sure that, you know, it's tolerant not only just to one attacker or two or three or five, so as tolerant as possible. And that's the whole concept of Byzantine fault tolerance. And this notion is actually used not just in blockchain, as we mentioned at the start of the tutorial. It's actually used in many different places. For example, it's used in airplanes, because you have all these systems talking to each other, all these what are called measurements coming through from different gauges and so on. And what if one or two of them fail? You can't just have the whole airplane crash just because one engine heat monitor failed and is telling us the wrong thing. So that in that case, you know, you have the airplane flying, and the generals actually represent different components of the circuits of the airplane, and everything's working fine, and then all of a sudden one of them fails, part of the main computer fails, or the heat sensor on the engine, or the wind speed meter, or something fails, the whole airplane still has to keep going. And so that's called Byzantine fault tolerance. It has to have that characteristic of Byzantine fault tolerance. It's also used in nuclear power plants, used in rockets. You know, the ISS space station has specific requirements for rockets that want to dock with it. To which extent are they Byzantine fault tolerant? Because there's so many factors that could jam the computers of the docking shuttle or whatever it is, and then it'll just destroy the whole station. For instance, like there's radiation which could destroy the memory, or the jam the circuits of the docking rocket, and it'll just smash the whole ISS station, and you know, people could die, and that's billions of dollars, you know, even if there's no people involved. And so yeah, so that's where Byzantine fault tolerance comes in. So it's a huge concept, even though it looks, you know, very simple and very kind of like airy-fairy about some generals in the Byzantine Empire. It's actually a huge thing in terms of decentralized systems, especially, and systems with lots and lots of components. And blockchain is just one of them, and we'll talk more about this, the application in blockchain next tutorial. But for now, if you'd like to learn more, there's the original paper, The Byzantine Generals Problem, from 1982 by Lamport, Shostak, and Pease. Interesting paper, not very technical, but there is some like logical mathematical proofs if you'd like to go through it. And then there's a blog if you don't want to go through all the mathematics in this paper. Again, it's more logic rather than mathematics. It's actually quite fun. If you don't want to go through all the mathematics, then you can just check out the blog. It's called Understanding Blockchain Fundamentals Part 1, Byzantine Fault Tolerance by Georgios Konstantopoulos. And it's on Medium. The link's here. It'll also be in the notes for this course. All right, hope you enjoyed today's tutorial and picked up some new information on Byzantine fault tolerance. And yeah, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Until then, enjoy blockchains.